what's happening is this thing called the market squeeze. What do you guys think that is?
Hey, this is Blake Sloan. I've been selling real estate over 14 years. Our team of highly trained professionals, along with our unmatched marketing, has sold thousands of homes here in the Myrtle Beach area, and this is how we do it.
I thought a lot about what to teach about, and it's really kind of going from the gut, what I've been feeling a lot lately. But I'm calling about the market squeeze matrix. What do you think the market squeeze is?
There's just less buyers, less sellers, but not really less agents.
Yep. So you're feeling the pressure, right? And I mean the squeeze on what? On you guys, right? You can watch it in the energy. You can watch it in the people. People a little bit less, a little bit more easily triggered, right? A little bit more stressed. Their energy is not quite as high. And if you remember, about 4 weeks ago, some guy stood up here and taught you guys about this, right? And said that what was going to happen? The same exact thing, right? That there's more stress. People are going to start dropping one by one, right? In some cases, you've already seen that happen here, right? And also in the business, because what's happened is the market has shifted. I noticed a lot yesterday. So what you're seeing is pressure with people. And what's happening is you can read in people's faces. You can see how they operate. You can see it in the office. And so I just want to talk about that because I was having a conversation about yesterday. I was like, look, I already taught them this like 6 weeks ago. And I told you it's going to happen. But the problem is, what do you think the problem is? It happens so slow you can't feel it. It happens so slow you can't feel it until what happens? One thing triggers you and all of a sudden everything's bad. Right? The deal that you've been counting on for weeks and months, it falls through and guess what? They give up, right? Something bad happens, somebody says something to you, something goes negative, and all of a sudden what happens, that's the straw that breaks the camel's back. What's happening is they're not understanding what's happening in the market squeeze. And the biggest problem with market squeeze is that most people don't know what's happening because they don't track their numbers enough. Right? They're not watching their calls, they're not watching their vitals, their answers, they're spoken to, their buyers signed, how many actual clients you got, how many you're showing properties to. All that stuff is very, very important because they feel like everything's the same. Or here's the big mistake everybody makes right now, is they think it's just seasonal. Right? Well, it's just seasonal. But the problem is it's not seasonal. Why? People are still buying. And it's weird because you're seeing the market share shift a little bit because sales last month only down like, 20%, 23% or something like that. But a lot of businesses are down 50%. And what you're seeing is there's a squeeze out of the middle where the people who are really good are getting more business. People who aren't really good, who aren't adjusting, aren't getting any business, and their business is down on a big level. And so I want to talk about today how to fight that, how to be aware of that, and how to really help coach you against yourself. What do you think the number one weapon is against the market squeeze? What's the number one defender that you have to have? This one, what else?
Just doing more work. Just doing more work.
More work? What leads to that? Your number one weapon right now that you have to make sure you focus on is mindset. Now, I talked about this before. It's not just review, but it's important. That's why I'm reminding you about it. Mindset is your number one weapon. Why? Because this market squeeze, right, the change and the shift in the market, like I mentioned, whoever makes it past the market squeeze will have a phenomenal business, phenomenal life. Why? Because it gets rid of all the pretenders. Right? All the pretenders who've been sitting there, who've been living off, just picking gold off the ground for the past 3, 4, 5 years, they're not making the adjustments when the market shifts, so all of a sudden they're wiped out. Now the ones who are there, who are willing to dig for it, are going to make the most amount of money. But the problem is a lot of habits haven't changed yet. So the number one weapon you have is mindset. The problem is, and the reason that is, I want you to make sure you be aware, it's a very slow killer. You can't feel it until you feel it. And then the problem is by the time most people feel it, what happens? The mindset has to be managed proactively. And it has to be done before you get to where it's not good. Are you with me on this? So it has to be in a way I mentioned before. Proactive has to be scheduled and purposeful. Scheduled and purposeful, right? And I'll put it this way. You must keep the cup half full at all times.
You can go back to your cup.
You've got to be prepared for it. You have to have money in the ATM to take out. Right? And the ATM money I'm referring to is your mindset and your positivity that's been filled prior to that. Does that make sense to you guys? It has to be done, and it has to be done daily. There's a reason I share those videos every morning. Why? Because I'm watching them, I'm listening to them. I did it on lunchtime yesterday. The one I shared this morning actually went through twice on lunch yesterday. And so I can't tell you the importance of, and the reason it's a silent killer, most people think you're good until you're not. Then all of a sudden you alienate, all of a sudden you isolate, and all of a sudden all these stories and justifications come into your mind of why you're not on your game and why things went sideways, why it didn't work out the way they should. Okay, and so I just want to tell you, your secret weapon, if you're brand new, same thing, like you want to have this, you have to make sure that your number one weapon right now against the market squeeze, against the shift in the marketplace, is your mindset. And it needs to be what? Through reading books, through listening stuff, through listening to audio, whatever it is. You have to feed your mind and borrow that certainty from someone else. I said this a million times, but probably of anybody in here, this is the most important time ever. Because you had fourth quarter, right? Slowest time of holidays. On top of that, you're in a recession. Okay? A lot of people call it a silent recession, but if you watch what's happening, you watch the Black Friday videos. You notice anybody watch the Black Friday videos where there's nobody there? Anybody see that? Right? Usually people are rushing through, but all of a sudden the Black Friday videos this year, no one was really rushing through. Why? Recession, right? Groceries are up 200% for some people. All kinds of things are happening. So what's happening? That's putting a squeeze on the entire economy. And so you just want to understand that's what's happening on top of interest rates being 2 and 3x what they were just in 2021. And so it's much more than just a seasonal holiday season right now. And that's okay because people are still buying stuff. Like I mentioned, steel's only down 20%. I got to just be that good to make sure that I can keep the market share that I deserve. And like I said, you just got to work harder to do it. Okay, but the weapon here to keep you from dropping or going sideways or, you see people who were on top of it just a month ago will shift and just lose everything mentally in one single month. But I'm just telling you, you got to make sure you build this in. Both scheduled and purposeful. What does that mean? What does scheduled mean, you think, in that scenario?
Write it down or it won't be done.
It's got to be put in your calendar. Mine are the same exact times every single day. In the morning, right, when I'm doing my stacks before the gym. It usually takes me 2 or 3, 4 ones I get through before I share one that's actually good. And then I do one at lunchtime. Usually when I'm driving. Why? Because it's a mental mindset refill. And that's something that's not tangible, but I can borrow things because I know, hey, look, I'm not the only one going through it. Everybody else goes through stuff, right? Same thing talked about in the second half of that video today. You have to go through those things. You have to be committed to go 2 or 3, 4, 5 issues or things that happen to you. And so once I have that pre-programmed in my subconscious, once something goes sideways, what do I say? No big deal, it's okay. Because I've already set myself up to win, but you got to make sure right now this is your most important thing. And if I can do anything, if I just do the whole meeting and be done with it, tell you, look, you guys got to do this every single day to make it through. Because the average people are not. They're just going to react to how they feel versus having an actual foundation of a true mindset that's set in there. You guys with me on this? Super important piece here. Second thing here. Obviously, I don't want to take too much time on this, talk about this before, but it's super important. Skill set. Something my coach and I are talking about every week, and I can't figure out what's happening and why conversion's going this, or our listing team, we're getting more leads than we had last year, but conversion's down face-to-face. It comes down to skill set and adjusting to the market. I've said it a million times, we got to make sure we're doing that scenario. We must learn new things for new situations. We must learn new things for new situations. This is important to talk about. This also go back to mindset. I'm going to study every night before I go to bed. So I laid in bed last night about 10:45 listening to some new courses that I went through, that I bought. I'm going to share one of the examples you guys today. But I went through that course, and guess what happened? I started feeling good. And one of the things, half the stuff I already knew. You're not going to get some nugget that's going to change your life at some point. But I got one little thing that was like, oh man. And one of the examples is he does a monthly, he sends 4 emails a month to his database of 100,000 people. I'm like, man, we're only sending 1 right now. And he gave me the 2 other examples that he was doing, plus a third that's like a wild card. I'm like, this could change everything. And so all of a sudden, I go through that and I have this extra little tool, this thing I've learned, and all of a sudden, what does it give me? More hope, more energy, right? More excitement, because I'm going through and I'm learning new things that now I have like this aha, like, man, this is one thing that I can change from the knob standpoint that allows me to make sure I can adjust and make sure we're staying ahead of the game. And it comes through sacrifice and doing that. I was exhausted, right? Been up since 5 o'clock yesterday morning. 10:45 nights when I'm like, all right, I'm exhausted, but I'm still going to get through this, right? With the 2 modules last night, felt good as shit. Felt so good I couldn't sleep, right? Because I was excited about what I went through. And so I want you guys, it's a big aha for me, it's like make sure you're focused on new things that you can learn, aka courses. I've bought a lot of courses for you guys. We have access to all the stuff that's in the Waybook, a lot of stuff on 360, a lot of the Warrior stuff, the daily coaching we have. So there's a lot of things you have. And just know, if you go through an hour training, you're not going to learn 100 things. All you need is 1 or 2. And the next day you get 1 or 2. And the next day you get 1 or 2. And all of a sudden, you start feeling good about it. What I noticed was the skill set piece, learning new things, guess what it had a great effect on? Mindset. And it's twofold. Number one is the recording of your subconscious, which is the positive motivational stuff that you hear. And the second piece is the skill set stuff. Because now I feel like, all right, I got a new tool I can use. And guess what? I'm excited to use it. I'm already excited now thinking about, all right, I got to do the things. I'm going to do the newsletters. I'm going to switch to this other software company that has a higher deliverability rate. There's all these things that I was able to learn from that. Like, man, okay, this is what they're doing. And that's why they're getting more results than me. It's super simple. You just got to take time to figure it out. And take some time and money to invest in that in many cases. Are you guys with me on this? Super important piece. Second piece, which is really important, everybody's talking about this right now, is we must make sure that we're role playing. It's the only real way to change. The guy in the course last night, even too, his team role plays in person twice a week. Just important to do, you're just talking about, because it's the only way that you get game ready before the game. An example is that so many people go into the buyer presentation, the seller presentation, and the difference is it's a new market with a new language right now. So how people spoke and reacted to you a year ago, 14 months ago, 16 months ago, 24 months ago is different from a language and back and forth than it is right now. You guys with me? Why? Because it went from a frenzy to more of a squeeze. Are you with me on that? In the frenzy, everybody's buying is super easy. When you have the squeeze and people are hesitant and rates are higher, the buyer's more hesitant, the seller's more hesitant, which means I tell you what? That much better with my words and my scripts and my word tracks. And so the way for me to do that is prep ahead of time. And the only way to remember that is through repetition. Just like when you learn the script, right? You got to learn it over and over and over and over and over. It took a while, it took a week. Just learn that one script. And so what's happening is we're not role-playing enough on the actual nuances of it. So for example, one of the nuances that's important on the listing side that we're going to start doing is the pricing. Now looking back, and I was talking to my coach last week, we weren't really role-playing pricing at all. Which is also why we're having trouble with what? Pricing. Because the game has changed, the market has changed, and so part of that's understanding as the agent, what nuances do I need to work on right now? So if I can't get people to properties to see properties, what do I need to role play on? How do I get them face-to-face showings? Right? What word tracks can I use to help get me face-to-face to people so I can get to the better part? Whatever it is. Okay, and I'm going to show you guys some examples in that course you can use to get, there's like 10 different closes to get people at properties. Okay, so it's super important for me to understand. That's important for me to understand in that piece of that. But here's the one question, right? If you look back, I taught in this 6 weeks, things are changing, the market's shifting, the pressure's coming in, but I want you to ask yourself a question, right? Have I actually changed my habits? And being real with yourself and look down and write in your notes, right? Have I actually changed my habits, yes or no? In the last 6 to 8 weeks. In most cases, the answer is no. We know the solution, right? I got to have more output. Market's down 20%, which means I need to really put my output 40% to make up for it. And just said everybody knows you just got to double down and do more stuff. But the problem is, you look at behavior, behavior is not changing. And all I can do is coach you on that ahead of time and say, look, the one thing that's going to help fix this is my behavior changing. And for many people, what's going to happen is, I'll talk about this with my coach, I a couple people in here, is that if behavior doesn't change, they won't make it. Why? Because the market has already shifted. The market's continuing to shift. And if you have to change your behavior, aka bad habits that you got 24 months ago, 12 months ago, 14 months ago, you have to change it. That could be what? Scheduling, my mindset planning, right? Put my stuff in, my skill set planning. The behavior has to change, my dial count. Like I mentioned before, we know the market's down 20% plus. In the last month, it was 30%. Right? 2 months ago, 30%. Last month, 20%. But we show up with 100 dials. Well, if I know the 100 dials was working in the frenzy, what does mathematically that tell me?
It's not more.
100 dials ain't going to cut it. So I have to be willing to investigate my behavior and understand, okay, is that the case in that, right? And I'm going to talk about that down here on how we fix that and how we win this game right here on this box. And this box can address that same issue. Okay? Second box here. And how I beat this, which is super important. I'm seeing this mess up a lot right now. It's fundamentals. Super simple. But guess what? People have gotten sloppy in how the market was in the previous years, right? Because it was a frenzy. You could not be as good on the text message. You could not be as good in the follow-up. You could not be as good on the phones. And what would happen is you could still get the deal because people were pursuing you. What you notice, though, is that the globe has shifted, and from the buyers and sellers pursuing us, we're now pursuing them at a high level. Now, the problem with that is you have 6,000 agents who are pursuing 20, 30% less buyers right now, who are also more hesitant, who have a longer sales cycle. And so what's happening is the fundamentals what makes or breaks everything at the end. Are you with me on this? So what I want you to make sure you understand, I'm going to give you a couple examples of it, but the bottom line is when you're in this market squeeze, in the fundamentals part, there's no room for error. There's zero room for error. So what I could get with before, I'd be okay. Now I'm going to get crushed. And so I want you to understand that you must be committed to excellence in your follow-through and your follow-up. What do I mean committed to excellence? What will be an example of that? Think about it on the buy side and the seller side. In my follow-up.
The time it takes to get back to someone.
Time it takes to respond to them. Right? Super important because why? We all know that. Time is of the essence and speed to response is very important. Drops 100x in the first hour from conversion from the MIT study. Right? If they don't answer that and leave the voicemail, what do I do? Send a text message, and what do I do then? Send an email. You have to do that right now because it's just so crowded and so loud out there. You have to have a higher presence here. It's just a must. It's a fundamental. But how many of us doing on the buyer side? We're missing that too. Right? We just call and leave voicemail and think they're going to get it. Or we call them and don't leave voicemail. Which I don't know how it's possible, right? We just got to make sure it's a fundamental. And here's the deal. It's hard. It's commitment. It's a lot. There's a lot right now on the seller side because you got to set up alerts. You got to do all these things. It's a lot, right? Because the market has changed. And so what we have to do is you have to train our brain to slow down and do what? Check all the boxes. Because I know if it's much more competitive right now, I don't know which method they may like or receive more. And so I got to make sure the most important is call, leave voicemail, text message. Why is it important to leave a voicemail? Because they don't have your number saved. They don't know who you are. The second piece, why do I got to send a text message? Because most people don't do what? Check their voicemail. And so if they do check their voicemail, it's usually days later. But statistically, most text messages get answered or opened immediately. Right? But here's the crazy part. Sometimes I don't have their right cell phone number. I can't send a text message. I want to also send email. If I use it through Boomtown or Sierra, I just copy and paste the Control-C, Control-V, the text message, and put that where? In the email. Doctor up just a little bit, boom. And there's a reason I'm doing that I want to talk about in the next box, okay? It's very, very important to do in that scenario. Super important piece there. So I got to be committed to excellence to this. Every single layer matters right now because it's an impression. But if they're looking at your professionalism and you call them back, leave a voicemail, send a text message, and email, what do they think? I want to work with him or her. Now we're going to add in there, you also have a picture of yourself in there. You have information about yourself, right? It's going to make a big difference in how you look and how you operate. Okay, I'm telling you all this stuff to build up to what we get on this box right here. Okay, which is going to be the new part we're teaching. But it's very important for us to do. Second piece I mentioned, and I kind of got ahead of that with that, is you got to make sure you stack the follow-up. You must stack it. Biggest reasons there are, number one, impressions. We're missing this a lot still. Why am I still teaching on this again? Okay, so it's important for us to be reminded, like, look, this fundamental piece is what makes or breaks us. And what's going to win in the market squeeze is nailing the fundamentals. What wins in a football game? Fundamentals every time, right? It's not the long passes, it's the fundamentals, right? Who executes at the smallest level. It was a crazy thing for me playing college football, watching us do the same little play over and over and over and over and over and over 100 times. And guess what would happen? I remember we had to run laps just, blocking this direction. But it's just how humans are, right? So you got to make sure you're slowed down and you master and we do the same thing as agents, right? We got to make sure we master these fundamentals here in these pieces. And so I mean that by stacking the communication. There's two reasons behind it. Number one is impressions. They see your name 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times. They think the same thing Matt just said. Wow, this guy or this girl's on top. And guess what it does? It differentiates me from all the other agents blowing them up from Zillow or Realtor.com or whatever it is. Okay? Very important piece there. Third piece here. I must have the tags and have it organized. Why?
So you know what the hell's going on.
I got to know who to call and when. That's a fundamental piece. All calling and all dialing is not created equal. All follow-up time is not created equal. And so I got to make sure that I'm doing the right follow-up in the right order and we'll talk about this in a forward, this is also going to allow me to be much better at my automations. And going through that course has just poked a lot of holes in some of our automations that we're not using the tags enough for me to even build out automations for you guys. I have the initial automations with initial text, initial emails, but there's so many more that I can build out if we just actually use the tags correctly. Okay, and I'm going to go through kind of what we're trying to get this foundation set on so I can help you guys in a way. One of the things that they do, which is really cool, which is really helpful, is they add in a CEO email. Hey, I'm the CEO. Just want to see how things are going with, it puts the agent in there, right? Just let you know that we really care about your success. We're the top agent and top team in the area. And you just layer these stuff, and they said what it did, it massively increased conversion. But for me, I got to be able to automate that, be able to have your name there based on the right tags. You with me on that? And I already have everything ready to go. I just got to be able to put it in there, but I need the right tags to help do that. Second one, we're missing this a lot. It's signed client. Why does that matter? We should be able to pull up all of our real-time clients so you know I got 34 signed clients right now. Here's who all they are, and I can touch base them because in my follow-up is going to be what? Different than a regular lead. But for my cadence to be different, I have to do what? Understand who they are so I can segment them and call them. It's very important. What's happening is we're treating your entire bucket the same, which is not really how it's supposed to work because they're not all created equal. Here's another one which is super important that we've been missing out on. Third one, showing property. Why is that important? So, showing property, why is that important?
We're out looking ready to buy.
They're out ready to buy. They're actually more valuable than what? And a signed client. Because all the signed clients aren't out showing property at the moment, right? So anyone I've shown a property to, I want to make sure I have them tagged as a showing property client. All my people who are showing property, or I can do tag signed client and showing property, whatever, you can do both. And it pulls all of them up. And then if I want to churn my bucket and find the hottest people, what I want to do? I want to call all of them, and I'm not going to, here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to let them slip through the cracks. And here's what a big aha for me was. How many of us have had somebody that's super hot, we're showing properties, we kind of neglect them a little bit, and then what happens? They cool off, now they're back into a nurture mode. That means I didn't keep them in the ether or keep them in enough heat for them to be wanting to continue looking their search and continue to buy something.